King Kong, Godzilla, the monsters that became household names. But for every creature that made it onto a lunchbox or a theme park ride, there were dozens of films that came before them, beside them, and after them that most people have completely forgotten. These are the ones that built the genre. 10 classic giant monster movies, from the film that started it all to the day they killed a god. Number 10, The Giant Behemoth, 1959. The man who made King Kong was still alive in 1959. He just wasn't getting the jobs he deserved. Willis O'Brien pioneered stop-motion animation. His work on the 1933 King Kong changed what movies could do. But by the late 50s, his protege Ray Harryhausen had become the name everyone wanted, and O'Brien was reduced to low-budget work on films like this one. The producers of The Giant Behemoth didn't even hire him directly. They contracted another company for the effects, who quietly subcontracted O'Brien for a flat rate of $5,000. He wasn't credited in the final cut. What he delivered, working on a shoestring with his assistant Pete Peterson, who had multiple sclerosis, was the London Rampage sequence that makes the film worth watching. The same screams from his 1933 King Kong are audible in the attack scenes. He didn't plan it that way. That was just the available audio. This was effectively his last film, a career that built the genre, ending without acknowledgement. Number 9, King Kong Escapes, 1967. This film exists because a children's cartoon rejected a script. Rankin/Bass, the American studio behind holiday specials like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, had a hit Saturday morning cartoon called The King Kong Show. They approached Toho about making a live-action film to go with it. Toho developed a script, King Kong fighting a giant lobster on a tropical island. Rankin/Bass passed. Said it didn't match the cartoon closely enough. Rather than scrap the work, Toho simply replaced Kong with Godzilla and released it as Ibira, Horror of the Deep. The rejected Kong script became a completely different Godzilla film overnight. Then Toho came back with a new Kong story, this one featuring a robotic duplicate named Makani Kong, built by a villain called Doctor Who. Rankin/Bass approved it. Ishiro Honda directed it, the same man who made the original 1954 Godzilla. He said he jumped at the chance because King Kong was one of the inspirations for Godzilla in the first place. The film is gloriously strange and criminally underseen. Number 8, Gamera, in 1965. Toho had Godzilla. Every other studio in Japan wanted one. Daiei Motion Picture Company had been watching Toho's monster franchise for years. They needed their own creature. The story of how Gamera came to exist depends on who you ask. The studio's president, Masaichi Nagata, claimed he sketched the concept himself after seeing a turtle-shaped cloud from an airplane window, an origin that mirrors almost perfectly the legend of how Godzilla was conceived on a flight back from Jakarta. What's undisputed is that the first Gamera film was built around sets that already existed. From an abandoned production, rather than scrap the miniatures, the studio turned them into a monster movie. Daiei was reportedly unhappy that director Noriaki Yuasa made the film friendly toward a young boy character, too child-focused, they felt. For the sequel, they demoted him. Then they realized the children were the entire audience. Yuasa came back. The series ran until Daiei went bankrupt in 1971. Gamera outlasted the studio that tried to sideline him. Number 7, Mothra, 1961. Before Godzilla fought anything, Toho had to prove their monster universe could support a second creature. The film they chose to test that theory starred a giant moth. Nobody thought it would work. It did. Mothra was a massive hit in Japan and became Toho's second most beloved kaiju character, appearing in more than a dozen films across 6 decades. The production was unusually ambitious. The miniature work was the most detailed Toho had ever attempted. Full 1/20th scale recreations of entire Tokyo neighborhoods built to be destroyed. The cocoon was originally supposed to wrap around Japan's National Diet Building, the Parliament. The producer killed that idea and moved it to Tokyo Tower instead. That version eventually happened in a 1992 sequel. The film was a U.S. co-production with Columbia Pictures, which created its own chaos. Toho changed the ending without telling Columbia, filming a completely new climax in Kagoshima before waiting for a response they never received. Columbia protested. Toho shot it again. The version that survived is the one most people have never seen. Number 6, Q, The Winged Serpent, 1982. Larry Cohen was fired from his previous film on a Monday. By Friday, he was shooting a new one. Cohen had been directing The Jury in New York when the producers removed him from the project. Rather than fly home, he pulled an old script from a drawer, hired actors on short notice, and began shooting within a week. Pre-production lasted 6 days total. Most of the film was shot guerrilla style on New York streets with no permits. The idea came from a single thought Cohen had while looking at the Chrysler Building. That would be the perfect place for a monster's nest. He kept the location out of early drafts in case it fell through, then paid the building's management $15,000 to get inside. The crew left their fake nest behind when they finished. Nearly a year later, the New York Times ran a front-page story about anthropologists descending on an abandoned police building to examine a mysterious nest discovered there. Cohen knew what it was. He kept quiet about the liability. The film was made for just over $1 million. Director Bong Joon-ho later cited it as an influence on the host. Number 5, Them, 1954. Jack Warner hated this film. He slashed the budget, killed the plans to shoot it in color and in 3D, and clearly expected it to fail quietly. It became Warner Brothers' highest-grossing film of 1954. The ants themselves were full-scale mechanical constructions, aluminum frames with netting, operated by people working levers from inside, much like floats in a parade. The actress who played the traumatized little girl in the opening scenes later recalled being genuinely fascinated by them on set. The eerie sound they make was recorded from bird-voiced tree frogs, not ants, tree frogs. One of the actors in a supporting role caught Walt Disney's eye during a screening. Disney was there specifically to find his Davy Crockett he left with Fess Parker, who had played a pilot who ends up in a psych ward after encountering a giant flying ant. Parker went on to become one of the biggest television stars of the 1950s. None of it would have happened if Jack Warner had gotten his way and the film had never been made. Number 4, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, 1953. This is the film that started the entire atomic monster genre. Without it, there is no Godzilla, no Them, no creature feature boom, nothing. A nuclear test in the Arctic thaws a prehistoric dinosaur. It migrates south toward New York. The military can't stop it. That template, bomb wakes monster attack city, was invented here in 1953 on a budget of $210,000. Ray Harryhausen created the creature effects entirely by himself. It was the first film on which he had full control over the technical work, and the first use of his dynamation technique, stop-motion models composited seamlessly into real-world footage. He spent years perfecting the method that would define his career. The film grossed $5 million and became one of the year's biggest hits. Harryhausen's Rhedosaurus was an original creation. He designed it from scratch, fitting the reptile with webbed hands and unusual ears before settling on the final look. The director's 6-year-old daughter saw the finished film and told her father he was a bad man for killing the nice beasts. That reaction stayed with him for the rest. Number 3, Tremors, 1990. The writer got the idea while sitting on a rock in the California desert working a Navy contract job, wondering what he would do if something underground wouldn't let him come down. S.S. Wilson carried that image for years. He and writing partner Brent Maddock eventually turned it into a script about blind subterranean predators that hunt by vibration, a concept simple enough to pitch in one sentence and smart enough to keep audiences engaged for 90 minutes. Kevin Bacon was broke when he signed on. A string of box office failures, a pregnant wife, and a mother recently diagnosed with cancer. He later said he was ready to sign on to almost anything that would pay him. He initially had no enthusiasm for the project. On location in Darwin, California, a real unincorporated desert town, something shifted. The cast bonded in the isolation. Bacon later called it the most fun he'd ever had making a film in his entire career. The graboid creatures were entirely practical. Puppets, mechanical rigs, wires. The film flopped in theaters. On VHS and cable, it became one of the most rewatched monster movies of its era, and it earned it. Number 2, Godzilla, 1954. 9 months before this film was made, a Japanese fishing vessel called the Lucky Dragon No. 5 sailed too close to a U.S. hydrogen bomb test at Bikini Atoll. The crew was showered in radioactive fallout. The catch was contaminated. One crew member died. The incident triggered a massive anti-nuclear movement in Japan and gathered 30 million signatures on a petition. Godzilla was made in that moment. Director Ishiro Honda and producer Tomoyuki Tanaka didn't make a monster movie. They made a film about what nuclear weapons do to living things. Japanese audiences in 1954 understood exactly what they were watching. Many left theaters in tears. The American version, released 2 years later, cut the E. Political content inserted Raymond Burr as a new American protagonist and turned it into an enjoyable creature feature. The grief was edited out. What remained was the monster. The original Japanese cut sat unseen in the West for decades. When it finally reached international audiences in full, what struck people wasn't the special effects, it was how much had been taken out and how much it still hurt. Number 1, Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, 1995. In July 1995, Toho's producer made a public announcement that went around the world. Godzilla was going to die, not retire, not disappear, die on screen. The studio confirmed it before the film was finished shooting. It was the first time in the franchise's 40-year history that they had declared the ending in advance. Ticket sales went through the roof. The film brings everything full circle. Destoroyah, the creature Godzilla fights, was born directly from the oxygen destroyer, the weapon that killed the original 1954 Godzilla. The monster that ends this Godzilla is made from the same thing that ended the first one. The composer Akira Ifukube, who had scored the 1954 original, returned for this film. It was his final Godzilla score. To sell the finality, Toho made a decision almost unheard of in the film industry. They paved over the studio's famous water tank, used in nearly every Toho monster film since the 1960s, and turned it into a parking lot before the film was released. They were going to make people believe this was actually over. Tomoyuki Tanaka, the producer who had conceived Godzilla on a plane ride in 1954 and shepherded every film in the series since, served as executive producer here. It was his last. He died 2 years later. The death scene, Godzilla melting down in slow collapse, the city freezing around him, is one of the most genuinely moving sequences in the entire franchise. A monster that started as a metaphor for nuclear horror, dying of nuclear fire, 40 years after the bomb that created him. 10 films, 7 decades, one idea that never got old, that something massive, something ancient, something we unleashed is coming. And we are not ready. Which of these had you actually seen? Drop the number in the comments. And if there's a giant monster movie you think belongs on this list, name it below.